going to put out a commercial that does not represent the group of people that actually helped to build the company. And so needless to say, Black women have been in an uproar. Shea Moisture had been trending on Twitter, on Facebook for the last couple of days. I posted a post this morning. It's gotten well over 100 likes, comments, shares. I mean, women are still commenting on it. I did post it up in the group as well, and I'm going to read it to you because, you know, what I've noticed is interesting is that Black men, and I'm not going to say all, because we're not homogeneous, right? Diversity, you know, but the majority of Black women have a problem with not that they're trying to expand their brand, but how they chose to try to expand their brand. Where it was interesting is that a lot of men, like, you know, watching the commentary, and the men are like, okay, so what's the problem? They expand their brand as business, you know? And what they're missing is that this is emotional for Black women. This is not a sort of rational, you know, well, this is business and this is how you make money in business. This is a very, very emotional thing for Black women. So I'm just going to go ahead and read, you know, really quickly. And I would love to hear your comments even after the show. If you want to comment, also you can. We would love to hear from you. And so just really quickly, what I said was, in full disclosure, I've never used Shea Moisture's products, but what I know for sure is that hurt often masquerades itself as anger. Black women aren't angry, Black women are hurt. Shea Moisture unearthed all the hurt, pain, betrayal, abandonment, not feeling loved or appreciated, not being valued, being used, abused, and feelings of worthlessness that Black women have been carrying in their wombs for generations. Some of you are thinking it ain't that deep, but for these Black women, it is that deep. What some see as Black women bullying Shea Moisture, I see as Black women collectively gavelizing, finding their voice, and standing in their power the best way they know how. Black women are sick and tired of being used, marginalized, and pushed to the side, rendered rendered worthless and not good enough, while everyone else benefits from our very existence. The lesson here is that while the offending person, or in this case, institution, has to be held accountable, ladies, it is our responsibility to heal. We must heal this generation's old hurt so that no one or no thing can trigger it ever again, because it no longer exists. So that was my commentary after reading, God, I don't even know how many posts on Facebook and Twitter about what was happening, because I'll be honest, like I said, I don't use Shea Moisture's products. And even though I am natural, been natural for, God, like 20 years now, I've never used their products. And so I didn't have that emotional tie to it. And when I saw the commercial, I looked at it like, okay, I don't particularly care for the commercial, but, you know, I was like, okay, well, what's, you know, I was kind of like everybody else, like, what's the big deal? But really looking at it and looking at experiences and knowing that this is a 30-year-old company and Black women have supported it from its existence, and now all of a sudden you look at the commercial and there's like one, I'm gonna call her swirly, in the words of Wendy Williams, swirly Black woman who looks mixed, and then the rest are white women. And so, you know, I think the lesson here, you know, I talked about it from an angle of healing, of, you know, really our responsibility. But the lesson for business owners is never abandon your base. Never abandon your base. And that is necessary in business, but don't expand at the exclusion of your base. You need to be in touch with who your base is. Who do you serve? Why do you serve them? And if you saw in the group, again, you can go to the Boot2boom group. I posted up a picture of the women who are in charge of the marketing. And all of those women are white women. It's 4 white women, not 1 Black woman. So how do we expect them to be able to tap into, you know, our unique circumstances, right? Who we are, what it is that we want, when there's no Black woman there representing us. So what does that say about these Black-owned companies that choose to have Black products, but don't choose to have employees that represent that base that they serve? So this is something we could talk about all night. We could literally spend the whole show discussing this topic, but we wanted to address it because, you know,
because we're Black.
Okay, so I'm getting, well, that we're Black women. This is a show about highlighting Black businesses, and you know, and like I said, it's important. So I just want to read what one of our commenters had to say. It's bad business, possibly detrimental to exclude the base who financially supported your business, period.
Yep. And not
how can you argue with that?
The historical, like, it's basically like saying, and the fact that they even have, like you said, people that are not representatory of the actual products itself. It's like, really, like, what exactly are you trying to say? What exactly is your message behind this all, you know? So it really burns my biscuits, really does. And as a marketer, or, you know, cutting edge marketer, I'll say, myself, you know, I've come in situations where I have had even a male, and I've talked about this before, even when a male says something that, you know, that other people are like, oh, wow, that's such a great idea. And it's like, well, I said that last week. I've also had that incidents happen when it was a Caucasian person and they were like, oh, well, you should be using Facebook ads. And I'm like, well, I said that a month ago. But then as soon as they say it, oh my gosh, that's so profound. And it's because of that, you know, because of the way that Caucasians, or that whole instance that they know something we don't. They must have some information, or they must have some type of knowledge above and beyond what we could possibly comprehend. And it's actually the opposite way around. It's actually the opposite of, we drive all of the culture. We could talk about Oprah and that whole thing too, when Oprah tried to do it and that failed her. So anyway, with all of that being said, I'll let Avalaura go ahead and finish up and introduce our guest so we can get on with it. I do want to honor his time, but I feel like that needed to be said.
Yeah, it's a hot topic. It's, you know, and really it's something for us to watch to see what happens. You know, so now let me just say that Shea Moisture did issue an apology, but really then the question becomes, is that enough? Because Black women are still upset. I mean, people are talking about throwing out their products. Now, from what I've heard, their products are not cheap either, but throwing out their products that they already have, not buying anymore. So, you know, what is Shea Moisture? What should their response be? How should they handle this? And can they, you know, can they handle this? Can they recover from this? Right? Well, so these are questions that we have to ask. What is it? What'd you say, Jessica?
We said before the show, Pepsi is going, thank you.
Right. I mean.
Yeah. So they might as well have threw a Pepsi can. She could have been drinking a Pepsi, and they could have just been, you know, it just could have been a whole thing. They could.
Really. Just some of the other comments. Dr. Vibe said that this is what happens when you don't control your narrative. This is why we need to move Blacks forward, is by economics. Yeah, I mean, you know, and that's, but see, the thing again, you could say that, yeah, we need to have our own and control our narrative, but this is a Black-owned company, y'all. So, you know, this is us, right? Starting our own thing. It's like it's for us, but not by us. I don't know what's going on. But this is a Black-owned company.
For us, but not hiring us.
There you go. There you go. So, you know, that's the thing. So, you know, and so, you know, even that's a question. As a Black business, what is your role? What is your responsibility to serving, you know, the Black customers, right? You know, so it brings up so many questions. And so it's not just, you know, an issue of let's all jump on Shea Moisture and, you know, what they did, but really looking at this from a holistic perspective and seeing, you know, what's really going on, why is it happening, and what needs to be done about it. So again, like I said, we could talk about this all day. You know, keep the comments coming. You know, as things come in, we'll certainly read them and address them. We do monitor the chat, but we definitely want to get into our amazing guest. We have an amazing guest today. And like Jessica said, we want to honor his time. But not only that, like, you know, we know he's going to have some awesome stuff to say. So we definitely want to get into that. But keep the chat coming. We're definitely watching it. All right. So with that being said, let me introduce to you Mr. David Walker. David F. Walker started his writing career in the 1990s with the self-published zine Bad Ass Mofo. Right now, he is an award-winning comic book writer, filmmaker, journalist, and educator. He is best known for his work in comics, which includes Shaft: The Complicated Man, Shaft: Imitation of Life. He's also worked with DC Comics as well as Marvel Comics, and which really known for at Marvel Comics, Luke Cage. And I watched all of these, y'all. Luke Cage, Occupy Avengers, Power Man, Iron Fist, Nighthawk, Fury, and Deadpool. So his upcoming creator-owned series, Prison City, will debut in late 2017, early 2018. So please join us in welcoming Mr. David Walker. Not to be.
Hi, how's everybody doing? How you doing?
Hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much for your patience. We are so happy to have you. And, you know, I always like to ask our guests, of course, you know, I read a little bit about you, but, you know, tell our viewers a little bit about and why you decided to become an entrepreneur.
You know, it's funny because, I mean, why did I decide to become an entrepreneur? I don't know if I decided to do it as so much as it just sort of happened. You know, I have been writing and self-publishing for over 20 years, and I've had all kinds of different jobs throughout my adult life. But, you know, at some point, I wasn't getting the sort of jobs that I wanted, doing the things that I wanted to do. So I just started doing them myself. And, you know, at some point you just sort of find, sometimes we don't choose the path chooses us. And so in terms of becoming an entrepreneur, it was just, you know, I wanted to write and nobody was hiring me to write. And I thought, I can't be as bad as some of these other people that are writing out there. So I just started my own little publishing company and started putting stuff out there, not knowing if I was doing the right thing, but nobody told me not to do it. You know, and by the time somebody told me it was a bad idea, I'd already done it. I'd already lost money and made money and then lost some more money and then made some more money. And that's sort of been the story of my life is, you know, sometimes people don't know what to do with you. You know, they don't know what to make of you. And if they don't know what to do with you, if they don't know what to make of you, then you have to, it's not their place, you know, anyway. You were talking about it earlier when you say you know, how you'll have an idea and then a week later somebody else has that same idea and they sort of take credit for it. And, I mean, that could be the story of my life. It could be, you know, I could write a memoir called Someone Else Taking Credit for Me Being a Genius.
Right?
And, you know, and that's a frustrating feeling. And we talk about that, you know, I have a really good friend of mine. We work together a lot on just different creative projects. And, you know, we both been in those situations before where you're in a meeting and you can state something emphatically, right? As a black person, we can say something like as factual as the sun rises in the east, and inevitably someone will go, "Are you sure about that?" You know, and then you know, and so my go-to response is always, "Well, I know. Let's just go ask a white person." You know, because clearly they have a monopoly on expertise and knowledge and wisdom. And so, you know, and of course I get away with saying some of the stuff that I get away with saying because I'm light skinned, you know, and the way I talk. Um,
And like,
but
you're from Connecticut.
yeah, and I've got the etiquette. But yeah, oh, I'm from Connecticut. You said. I thought you said I have etiquette. Both the same thing. When you're from Connecticut, you have etiquette. The two go hand in hand. You know.
So he got the Connecticut card. You could pull the Connecticut card. I didn't know there's such thing.
There is such a thing. There is such a thing. But
I didn't either. But I'm not light skinned, so I don't think I have that privilege.
Oh yeah, no. You can pull it anytime, but it's but people just they don't buy it most of the time unless they've been to either Bridgeport or South Norwalk, parts of New Haven. They, you know, I mean, people just laugh. Or people make me laugh anyway. But going back to your question, why I became an entrepreneur, I think the long and short of it is, again, I never realized I was doing it until it was done. I never realized I was doing it. Probably, I think the first time I realized I was an entrepreneur was the first time I had to pay taxes, had to figure out my taxes on, because I had an I-9. You know, I had the tax form that when they don't take money out from out of your, you know, it's not a real job per se, and I think that all sprang from you know, people not giving me an opportunity, and I was raised by my within my family, which is that the sort of belief system was that you don't wait for the opportunity to come to you. You go find that opportunity, and you need to be, you know, constantly sort of looking around for it. And I always tell people, I teach part-time, and I tell my students, you know, most people spend their lives waiting by the fireplace for Santa Claus to come down the chimney, and they ain't even paying attention to the Easter Bunny knocking at the back door. Okay? And so opportunity presents itself in so many different ways, and in my lifetime, it has never once presented itself in a way as I imagined it to come to me. And so a lot of times it's like looking at something and going, oh, well, what can come from this? You know, or just asking what's the worst that can happen? You know, am I gonna lose a limb? Am I gonna, you know, to me, it's like if there's a realistic chance I'll end up dead or in jail, I'll probably stay away from it. But everything else is sort of fair game.
I love that.
That's
wow, you said a mouthful.
You know, and I didn't do it without
it was a
swearing.
good mouthful. It was a good mouthful.
I didn't do it.
No, you did good. You didn't do that. Not yet. I don't know. But, you know, one of the things that you said that was so key is that people didn't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
But you knew what to do with you. And I think that's so important to understand, is that people aren't always going to know what to do with you. And when you have dreams that, you know, other people tell you that, you know, you can't do, or you shouldn't be doing, or why don't you just be conventional and do what everybody else does? You have to really have that courage and conviction and just say, you know what? No, I'm going to do my own thing because I believe in it enough.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And that's,
you know,
that's what you did.
I was fortunate that, you know, I had a family that was very supportive and very hardworking. So I learned work ethic from them, and just, they told me to never take what other people told me about myself, you know, and that was the thing. You know, I was told I was a bad student and that I had trouble learning, and even as a kid, I was like, nah, I ain't got trouble learning. You got trouble teaching. That's your job. It's to get me to understand this, and if you can't get me to understand it, then you're doing something wrong. And of course, that attitude got me into trouble a lot as a kid. But I finally met some teachers as I got older who sort of understood that I was just bored. You know, it's like they teach you the same thing year after year, from kindergarten to the end of high school, your senior year, they don't change it up very much. And I just remember, like, by third or fourth grade being like, didn't we already learn this? Didn't we already learn that I before E except after C unless it sounds like A as a neighbor and way? We've already learned this. How many more times do you have to teach this to us? And so I was fortunate that I discovered that I like to learn. And so I was that kid. I mean, you can see behind me, you can see all these books behind me right now. And this is only a tiny portion of it. I'm actually sitting on a stack of books right now. I'm not even sitting on a chair.
Wow.
I'm kidding. I am sitting on a chair. But,
like, I thought you were sitting on a book chair. It's like,
but
I was like, oh, he deep. I'm going to have to get my game up.
All right. I was like, I want one of those.
When you didn't know, that's when you major. You still know knowledge.
But yeah, no, I love to learn. I love to read, and I was a weird kid, and I think that it was I grew up in a predominantly white town, went to a predominantly white school, and the only black folks that I was around were either my family or my neighbors, the people that lived on the within the block, and it was just an interesting time because I remember thinking there was a time when I thought, like, every man that I grew up around was either like a custodian or did, like, cut grass, and they all wore the same green uniform. This was in the 1970s, so it was like, that the green. I don't know if they were Dickies back then, but they were the green pants and the green shirt. And I literally thought every black man, that's what they did. And my grandfather actually owned a business. He owned his own business, but it was a custodial service business. So I knew you could own your own business, but I thought all we were supposed to be able to do was clean up after white folks and clean up their mess. And I remember at a very early age, my uncle, for some reason, my uncle had to watch me for some reason, which was like probably the stupidest thing that anyone could ever do was leave my uncle in charge of me this one particular day. But he was working for my grandfather, and so I went on the job with him, and it was in the evening, and he had to go clean out a bank. My grandfather's company that was one of their clients, was this bank. And so my uncle's mopping the floors and cleaning everything. This is after hours. And he went into the bathroom, and to go clean the bathroom, he started cussing and just swearing like up a storm, And I ran in because I thought something had happened to him, and I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And I went into the bathroom, and someone had literally taken doo-doo and smeared it all over the walls, right? And I watched my uncle clean up somebody else's crap. And like I said, I'm maybe 6 or 7 years old, and in that moment I was like, I'm never doing this. I didn't think there was anything wrong with doing that, and I still don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I was like, I'm not going to clean up after this. And it was interesting too, because it's how we process things. Like I said, I'm 6 or 7 years old. I had never seen, the only other black people I'd ever seen in the bank was like if I went with my grandmother. I never saw a teller. I never saw other black folks in there. So, like, in my mind, I knew it was a white person who had done this, right? And I'm thinking, I'm never cleaning up a white person's doo-doo. I did have a job where I had to do that once. So,
are you serious?
Yeah, but that's
the law of
story.
Attraction, right?
That's another story altogether.
Wow.
But yeah, so it was a lot of it was how I was raised, and a lot of the values and lessons instilled in me by my family.
That is profound. So I mean, I get it. You obviously you knew you're a learner. You like to read. You like to write. So how did that then translate into comics?
Well, you know, when I was a kid, I that's what I always wanted to do as a kid. I wanted to write. I wanted to draw and write comic books. I thought from a very early
Okay.
age that's what I was going to do. And when I graduated high school, I went to art school and learned that I wasn't nearly as good of an artist as I thought I was. And it took probably 2.5 years for that lesson to really sink in. Um, but as I was learning that I didn't have the discipline to be a really good artist, I was discovering that the writing kind of came naturally to me, came much more naturally, and I didn't have to work as hard to do it. So I veered towards writing, and I just started writing whatever I could think to write. And so I would write short stories, and I would write essays, and I would write screenplays, and I was just like, I know I'm going to be a writer someday, you know. And this is by the time I was in my late teens, early 20s at this point, moving towards film a little bit. Started self-publishing, and you know, like this is I'm leaving out a lot of the dirty details, right? But eventually, I ended up in journalism, and I got a job working in a newspaper, and going back to opportunity. I'd never worked as a real journalist before. I mean, um, I'd written and published my own stuff, and I'd written some movie and film reviews for other small, really small publications. But a local newspaper where I live somehow stumbled across my work, and they offered me a job as an editor. And they said, you know, we really like your voice, we like what you're doing. And I said, yeah, I don't know anything about working at a newspaper. I mean, I literally flunked out of high school journalism, right? So, you know,
Wow.
and I wasn't going to take the job. And I was like 30, maybe 31. And one of my best friends, I told him, I said, I've been offered this job. And I said, I don't think I'm going to take it. And he was like, yo, man, what are you thinking? Like, this is a great job. And I was like, man, I don't know if I can do it. And he says to me, I'll never forget, he goes, yo, what's the worst thing that can happen if you don't do it? They fire you. You ain't got a job right now anyway, so what's the problem? Like, at least you'll you know, get maybe one paycheck out of it. And he was like, but you'll never know if you can do it unless you try. And and it was in that moment that I realized that I truly began to understand the notion of what opportunity can mean. And so I took the job, and I spent every single day of the first year thinking I was going to get fired. And I did so many things. I got in so much trouble. I was like, but when my 1 year anniversary came around, I was like, yo, they ain't fired me yet. And I was like, there's nothing I can do. Like, I actually made a list of like the 3 things that I could do that would get me fired, and you know, like, and none of them were things I was willing to do. You know, I wasn't gonna try to sleep with the boss's daughter. Okay, you know, I wasn't gonna come in and shoot my coworkers. And so after a year, I realized, oh, I'm here, and learn as much as you can, because you don't want to be here the rest of your life. And then I just started learning, and I've been learning since the first day. And so I was there for 7 years, which is probably maybe 2 years too long, but that's all right. You know, sometimes you don't know these things until later. I know that at 5 years, I was like, I got to get out of here, and I was there 2 more years after that.
Wow. That's
Wow,
that's
such a
powerful. I,
long.
I have so many questions. I'm gonna let Jessica take over, because I have so many questions, but I'll let her roll.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm going to get deeper into the Black cinema because that's my thing.
Okay.
So I know you're a professor of Black cinema. And so how did you make that transition, or was it a transition? Was it more or less you're working in both fields?
Now, it was
Black?
really, okay, so first of all, I'm a professor of creative writing.
Okay.
But I've written books on Black cinema. So how that
Gotcha.
happened it was really simple. I was a kid growing up, I'm significantly older than both of you, and and so, you know, I was growing up in the 70s, and in the 70s, there's one thing that every black household has, which was a subscription to Ebony and a subscription to Jet. So I guess that's two things, really.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I would always see Ebony and Jet laying around the house, and I would pick it up and I'd read it, and I'd see all these. You know, I was fascinated with the actors and actresses in the movies, the TV shows, but really the movies, because I wasn't old enough to go to a lot of these movies, Shaft and the Pam Grier movies and all that stuff. So really, like, I couldn't wait till I was old enough to get into the movies by myself to go see these movies, and by the time I was old enough, they were gone, and then they started showing up on home video. Movie, you know, everything from Black Belt Jones to Foxy Brown, all this stuff. And so I started watching them and really wondering, well, where are all these folks? You know, like there were movie stars, but they're gone. And so I kept saying, I probably spent 2 to 3 years asking everybody, where'd they go? Where's Jim Kelly? Where's Pam Grier? You know, where's Fred Williamson? Where's Jim Brown? Where's all these people that I remembered, and I could watch them on video, and nobody could answer the question. So I was like, well, I guess I got to figure it out. So I decided. The short version is I decided to make a documentary about black films of the 70s. I probably spent a year and a half trying to convince other people to make this documentary, and nobody thought it would be interesting. And I was like, no, it's going to be really interesting. And so I set out to do that. And that then coincided with me starting my own publication, which was really, I'm trying to think the best way to describe it. I started my own publication because making the film was taking too long, and I had, you know, back then I had no patience, and so I was like, well, if I can do both things at the same time and put out a magazine, and back in those days you could, you know, in the 90s, it was pretty easy to get a publication, to get distribution for your publication. There was a couple distributors out there, and you get your stuff into stores like Virgin Mega Stores or local, you know, smaller magazine shops, things like that. And again, I didn't realize I was going into business for myself. I was just like, I was trying to keep occupied. You know, I had now it's what I call the fire. I think all of us have a fire inside of us, and you can either try to put that fire out. You can either try to extinguish it, or you can stoke it. And so, you know, at this point I was in my early to mid 20s, and I was just like, you know, I was ready to take on the world. And so that was it. I just started doing anything and everything, and I never stopped to think if it was stupid or not, you know, or if I was misplaced in doing it. I was always going back to, you know, my uncle cleaning out that bathroom at the bank, or I had a couple cousins who worked. They cleaned septic tanks, and they would come home from work, and, like, you know, they smelled like they'd been cleaning septic tanks, and again, there was nothing wrong with that. This is my family. These are people I have the utmost respect for, but I was like, that's not for me. You know, and and something clicked in my head that was like, they're doing this, so I don't have to do it. You know, they're providing something for me. So yeah, I just started studying, you know, black film, reading whatever I could find, and writing as much as I possibly could. And then I started meeting, like, the people. I as I was making my documentary, I started meeting folks. And that was like a really transformative time in my life, because I was being educated by people who had come before me and had been discarded by essentially discarded by the entertainment industry, you know. Black folks are our value. Our value is measured in a different way than white folks' value is in this society. And that's because when we came to this country, which was not by choice, we came as a commodity, right? And so Black babies had no value until they were old enough to work. And old Black folks had no value if they couldn't work anymore. Black women had no value until they could make babies. And after they couldn't make babies anymore, then the only value they had was to take care of babies, you see. And it hasn't changed. The context has changed, but it's still similar, you know. And I met a lot of really interesting people. Some of them aren't alive anymore, who had kind of been discarded by the entertainment business. And I listened to everything they told me, you know. I was like, because that was my question, was like, what happened, you know? And in the process, I learned a lot. And then I realized that, you know, you can't look at the history of Black film without looking at the history of film. Just like I get upset when we call it Black History Month, because it's American History Month, and it's, you know, and our history is American history. But we, you know, there's this need to separate us and everything that we do as if somehow we're still living in the separate and not even quite equal. You know, we haven't moved past that. No matter what people want to say, we're still there. You know, I mean, and again, me and my friend Elijah joke about this all the time, and he's like, well, yeah, except for you, because you're so light. And I'm like, well, yeah, and you're so dark. So, haha. But at the end of the day, they don't treat us that differently. I'm talking about him and I. Him and I worked together for a while, and I would watch. We were the only two Black guys in the room, and I would watch, like, they would ignore him and defer to me. But if there was any other white folks in the room, they would ignore me too. You know, it was like, yeah, let's just move down the color spectrum until we can get as little melanin as possible. And the less melanin you have, the more knowledge and expertise you have. And I don't buy into that.
I don't know if y'all tweeting, but y'all need to tweet something.
Listen, the knowledge bombs being dropped tonight. I can just sit and listen to you talk. You have a very calming, just, you know, just really nurturing voice. And you're dropping all this knowledge. I'm like, I can just sit back and just let you go.
Well, you know, I'm the angriest person you're ever going to meet, probably, you know. I mean, like I always tell people, when we look at it historically, the angriest Black folks were always the lightest, right? You know, Malcolm X was angry, Huey P. Newton was angry, and
light.
That's so true. It's so true.
and the reason why is because we're constantly being questioned. You're not really Black, or it must be easier for you. You got. I mean, when I had hair, I didn't have good hair. I was as nappy headed as they got, you know. We go through this, and it was. I was always really angry about that, and I still get really upset. Like if you want to push my button, like accuse me of being not really Black. Or you talk white, and I'll lose it, you know, and I'll be like, well, let's just step outside, you know, let's see how.
Wow.
You know,
look how you said it. You like, let's just step outside.
Step outside. I'll show you Black. I'll show you Black.
So cool. Like, just so calm, so collected.
You know what? I think he's just a cool cat. David is a cool cat. That's just how he is. You know, he grew up in that time. Look, he is the creator of, what is it? Is it Mofo? Is it FOMO?
Badass Mofo. Badass
Mofo. That's him. You know, that's just him. He's just like, you know, we just gonna put this in a comic book, but this really me. So I know our audience is gonna kick our butts if we don't talk about these comics. So let's get to these comics real quick.
Okay.
Tell us about Iron Fist. What is it? Luke Cage. You have a long list. Tell us about all
I've
of them.
got a
Tell
long
us.
list. Well, I was writing Power Man and Iron Fist. The last issue came out last month, and a lot of people don't realize that Power Man and Luke Cage are the same guy. He just has two different names. And in fact, I'm looking around to see if I've got somewhere back behind me. I probably have a collection of. It was called, the original title was Luke Cage, Power Man. So I was writing that book for a while, and now I'm writing a book called I'm writing Luke Cage. He's his solo book, which debuts in May. So just a couple of weeks from now. I think like the 17th is when it comes out. And I've been writing for Marvel now about 2 years, and before that I was writing for DC. I wrote Cyborg, which if anybody has kids who watch Teen Titans, Cyborg's a member of and the cartoon is a member of the Teen Titans.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
and then I also wrote Shaft. I wrote the Shaft book, Shaft comics,
Wow.
based on the character John Shaft, and so I wrote 2 graphic novels and a regular novel. And that was me being my most like forward thinking because I had made the decision that I wanted to try comics again. I was getting older. I was having my midlife crisis, and I figured if I didn't try to do the thing that I always wanted to do as a kid, I was going to die with regrets. And so I decided to move forward and do it. And I knew a ton of people in the industry, and so I'd done some smaller gigs here and there, and I knew I needed something that would put me on the map, and I wanted to write something with a strong black male lead because I felt that there was none of them, very few of them in the comic industry, and so I made a list of the attributes that I wanted my character to have, and then I realized, oh well, this is John Shaft, and so I thought, well, if I can figure out how to do a Shaft comic, that's going to put me on the map. That's going to cut like 3 years off of my time in the trenches. And so I found out, most people only know the movies, but there were 7 novels. So I knew that there was 2 sets of rights. I knew that there was film rights, and I knew there was the publishing rights. And so I just needed to find out who had the publishing rights and what they wanted. So I tracked down the estate of Ernest Tidyman, who had created John Shaft, built up a relationship with his widow. And she's an amazing lady. I think she was the first white woman signed to Motown, I believe, if I remember correctly. And so her and Suzanne DePass, who ran Motown for Berry Gordy, was like her best friend, and just she's an amazing woman because she has these stories where she's talking about hanging out with Elaine Brown from the Black Panther Party and Suzanne DePass, and it's like, oh wow, this white lady's like, she's legit, she's down, right?
What was the doctor and just call her light skin?
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt, right? So, and so once she was on board, once Chris Clark was on board, then I found a publisher, and I said, hey, would you guys be interested in doing a Shaft comic? And they said, oh, we've been trying to get the rights for years, but we can't figure out who has them. And I said, are you trying to get the film rights, from or the publishing rights? And they were like, what do you mean the publishing rights? And I said, well, there's a series of books. And those 2 things are almost never tied together. And so they said, yeah. And I said, well, if I can help facilitate this deal, you'll let me write this book. And they were foolish enough to put that in writing. Okay. I wasn't going to have this conversation over the phone. I did it all via email and saved all my emails. And so when the deal finally came through, I got to write Shaft, and that was like, it wasn't the first comic I did, but it was the first comic that got like pretty wide attention. And so everything sort of led from there. And now I'm the guy that whenever someone's got a black character that they want to do something with, they go, oh, he's the guy, and I think that if I was younger, I think that might bother me more. But I'm older, and I realize that, like, well, there aren't enough black characters out there, and so now that I'm in for however long I'm going to be in the room, as they say, my two primary goals are to, in terms of characters, is to bring more black women characters into the pages of comics, right? But then it's also to get black women working in the industry, and because that goes back to the shea lotion thing you're talking about, right? You got what? Because what I used to think was, oh, if I could just get a job writing a comic with black characters, that'll be enough, right? But then you realize, well, everybody who works in editorial is white, and everybody who works in marketing is white, and everybody who works in distribution is white, and not everybody, but most, and then you find yourself having to explain things, and like, I'm done explaining. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'll hand you a copy of Howard Zinn's The People's History of the United States, and you can read that, and then you can understand where I'm coming from. Or you can read, Seize the Time, or you can read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I give you a list of documentaries. Eyes on the Prize is available at your local library. I educated myself. You can go educate yourself, right? And that's when people start getting mad at me. You're mean and you're condescending, and I'm like, I'm old and grumpy, and I've been listening to your tired ass excuses my whole life.
Yeah.
And so I just, where I'm at now is like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to do what I can. I try to answer as many questions as I get via Twitter and Facebook and emails, and talking a lot to black women, because the older I get, the more I see, like, as bad as we as men have it, like, black women got it worse. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just, and I say it, and when I say it, I usually offend half the people in the room, and then I have to explain how the value of black women used to be measured, right? Exactly. And we're talking about, we come from a society, we live in a society where the value of a black woman was how many slaves could she produce. Boom. Yep. That's it. Nothing else. And it's like, black men could still, we could still pick cotton. You know what I'm saying? After the Emancipation Proclamation, they created the chain gangs for us, right? That's what they did. They created the prison industrial complex to give us men something to do. So we still had some semblance of value. But, our value was tied up in our misery, right? In our oppression. With women, it's like, well, what do? We can't force them to make, the best we can do is force them to make more potential prisoners to feed this machine that, has been around. I mean, if you study the history of prisons in America, they pretty much came into being after slavery. It was, what are we going to do with them? We set them free. What are we going to do?
Yeah, and to that point, just really quick, David, you know what, I think, and you're absolutely correct, I think black women have gotten the worst out of all of it, because not only were we then, placed as, oh, your only value is how many slaves you can produce, but, excuse me, sorry, but it was also, okay, you've produced this many slaves. Now let me take it from you. Let me take your child from you. Let me take your husband from you. And having to battle with that and having to combat that and all of the feelings and the loss and the grief that we felt when our children were being killed. And we go through it today as well, where we have children and, we have this little human that depends on us for everything. We also have our husbands or our significant other that also depends on us. And we are like the all saving grace of everyone around us and trying to just make everything happen and everything move. And we also have to then think about, what if my son goes out of this house and he's shot down? What if my son then goes, my husband goes out of this house and then I don't have that support anymore? So it really truthfully is all of those things together. It's definitely that piece. So
it's difficult, it really is, because I think that, I don't want to speak for all Black folks because I can't, we're not one monolithic block. We don't all think alike. We don't all have the same experiences, and yet we all do have some of the same experiences. And, we still haven't even fully dealt with all the trauma that was inflicted upon our great grandparents. We're still carrying all that around with us. Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about this in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And it's, we still have America's still in its infancy. And if this country is still in its infancy, it's only 30 something years old, 240 years old. A little bit longer if you go back to when it was just a colony that had come in and wiped out all the people who were already here. But then we as a people, the Emancipation Proclamation was signed just a little over 200 years ago. My great-great-grandparents, so that's just two generations back, they were all slaves. It ain't like it's happened to somebody, I have pictures of my great-great-grandparents, I know who they were. I have their names. This isn't some abstract concept of who they were. And so to me, a lot of what we have to do is understand that, and what America has to do is, because America as a whole has to get past all of this. We can't get past it until we acknowledge it, till we talk about it. And they're trying to blame us for getting shot in the streets, for, you don't want to get me started on that. We'll be on here for hours.
I can tell. I could tell, but what I want to know is first of all, I want to say I'm so grateful that you are knowledgeable, right? Because a lot of times what happens is, like you're talking about the industry, pretty much everyone represented is white. At least you, as the token Black guy writing Black comics, and you are knowledgeable and aware. And you're not the Black guy who is writing for, Black comics, but you're not knowledgeable and aware of our history and what Black folks have been to, right? Because we know that happens too, right?
Yeah, it does.
So,
it does.
My question is, how do you tell that and then put that into a Luke Cage or a Shaft, or how do you translate all of that history and that hurt and that knowledge and everything that we've been through in a way that is entertaining, right? But it's also educating as well.
I think my job as a writer, I feel, is to be entertaining first and foremost. But the only agenda that I have, other than to be the best writer I can be, is to help Black folks reclaim their humanity. And our history in this country has been one of constant deprivation of our humanity. It's a denial of our humanity. And so whether I'm working on Shaft or Luke Cage or whatever it is, it's the only thing I feel like is like, okay, how can I show that they're a human being? We're dealing with these iconic characters. They're larger than life. They're fictional. And sometimes it's just as simple as going, okay, well, I'm going to have him say it this way, or I'm going to, drop a little bit of a reference. It was on the Netflix show Luke Cage, which I had nothing to do with the show. I know some of the writers on the show, but there were moments when you were watching it where you were like, thank you. This is what a conversation at a black barbershop really is like. It's little things like that, and it's just knowing that, and sometimes those can be some of the biggest fights that we have creatively with the power structure, because the power structure thinks, whether it's we all listen to hip hop, or that we all, whatever it is that whatever stereotypes they have of us, right? I don't watch any sports. I like hip hop, but I don't love it. I used to love it. What were they? I used to love her, but I don't love her anymore.
You used to love her.
Yeah. but now we're.
For those of you that don't know common sense before he would come. Yeah.
I was just about to recommend that you meet Kendrick Lamar, because you was talking about all this history and stuff. Like, you and Kendrick Lamar need to.
Oh no, I you know what? It's a true story. I went out and bought his new album like last week, and the last hip hop album I bought before that was To Pimp a Butterfly. So the only two, quote unquote new hip hop albums that I've bought in the last, forever has been him. I kind of
let him know, tag him. He's bringing folks back. He's bringing folks back to hip hop.
It's not even that he's like, I can't even say he's bringing me back to hip hop, so much as it was just like, he's given that, that like, he's reminding me that we are articulate in ways that not everybody can understand.
I agree.
And I was talking about, I was born and lived in Connecticut until I was about 13 or so. But my family was from deep South Virginia, right on the North Carolina border. And so I know a lot of folks from the South, right? And, people talk about it, and you can't hang where they hang, and they will have, and, but if you learn to listen, you realize, these are some smart people. Like there's some real wisdom here. We as black folks tend to be dismissed in general, and the thing I love about Kendrick Lamar is, I got into an argument with somebody the other day, and they were saying, he's a sexist, and the things he says about women, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to argue that point with you, but what I do want to say is that he's saying stuff that like I'm old enough to be Kendrick Lamar's dad, okay? And he's saying stuff that resonates with me.
David.
Pardon me?
Because you keep talking about how old you are, and you look how old are you?
I'll be 49 this year.
You're not old.
And Kendrick Lamar's like 21, something like that. I don't even know how old he is.
You are so not old.
Yeah, you ain't that old.
I like she said that old. She's like, you ain't that old.
You're not old at all.
Well, you're not old at all, really. Like, really, no, you're not old at all. Yeah.
It only feels like that most days.
Maybe. Yeah. I think so.
It's this country can age us in ways that I think a lot of people don't understand.
I agree.
That's a thing called experience.
Yeah. But yeah, so
I agree.
Kendrick Lamar does. He's all right. I'm definitely, I'm still not sure if I like this album more than the other one, but it's dope. It is a dope album.
Yeah. See, you still using dope, so you still down with the car.
I mean, listen.
I still say stuff is funky fresh.
Always be used. You can never not use dope.
But like I said, I said something. The other day I was talking to a friend, and I said, "Yeah, man, that Kendrick Lamar album is funky fresh," and they looked at me like, "What?"
Nah,
Yeah,
that one not so. Not so much.
No.
I'm gonna give you both, but we gonna have to remove Funky Fresh.
Yeah, brother, don't let me down. Okay, I know we have some questions in the chat, so let's definitely hit up on those questions. Ava, I will get you to do that for me.
Wow, a lot of comments in the chat. You know, one of them, I like his thought process. One of them, that's the same thing my grandmother told my father: never stop yourself from anything. Let them fire you, never fire yourself. And what is the worst that can happen to you? All they can say is no. So one of the questions, okay, this is clearly a comic fan.
Okay.
Do you know in Netflix, Luke Cage, Power Man's made the decision to have his half brother be his mortal enemy?
Okay, so repeat the question.
Okay, do you know who in the Netflix version of Luke Cage, Power Man, made the decision to have his half brother be his mortal, I think that should say, mortal enemy?
You know, I actually don't know who made that decision, because in the comics they weren't half brothers. They knew each other and they were best friends, but it's funny because I've never had a chance to really talk to any of the people from the show, so I don't know who made that decision. I kind of get why they made the decision, but that's would I have done that if I was in that position? I don't know. So I don't know why they decided to do that, other than I think that it somewhere along the lines, perhaps it has to do with the fact that notion of, am I my brother's keeper? But I don't know. I really don't. Sorry.
Okay.
That was a great question.
No, but that's an interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting point though, of wondering too of why they change it from the original writing to how they decide to change it when it comes to the screenplay in terms of the actual shows, the TV shows. I wonder how that whole process works.
Well, I think
it's the same thing. Like I'm a Walking Dead fanatic, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't read the comics, but I hear it's a lot. Several differences between the comics and then actually what they put out in the show.
Yeah, I mean and I'm one of those people who I like the differences between a movie and a book, or a comic book and a TV show. I don't want them to be the same thing. If it's to me, it would be boring if I knew what was going to happen next. And I think a lot of it is just that we're talking about two very different mediums, right? Where both film and television, there's not much participation on the part of the audience. You just sit there and you watch it and you experience it. Whereas in comics, there's you're imagining the voices yourself, and then in a regular book, you're imagining everything. You're imagining the voices and how they look and what places look like. And so when depending on what medium you're working in, you have to think about, how is this going to be presented, right? So going back to The Walking Dead as an example, if it had been a book before it was a comic, we would have wondered what the zombies look like, because they'd just be described through words. But because we got the comics, we saw visual representations of them, but we didn't know how they sounded. We didn't necessarily know what they looked like when they were moving. And then in television, they had to think about that. But you also have to think about the way stories unfold and dynamics and I'm working on a project right now that is taking a person's life and turning it into a graphic novel. I'm doing my first real historical piece, and it's like I don't even know how to start to do it. It's like how would you turn Roots into a graphic novel?
Wow.
I mean, now there's a challenge. That's if anybody out there wants me to do that, I'll be available in probably 2018. I'd be available to turn Roots into a graphic novel. I would kill to do that. It might drive me crazy, but I would still love to do it.
The challenge of it, yeah. Wow. Yeah. You brought about some good points. I guess as a consumer, sort of just watching, I never really thought about that. I mean, that whole process.
Really
we
makes
could have
me
a
want
whole
to
nother
take your
discussion.
class.
But that,
you need to bring your class
I
on.
know, right? I was like, am I gonna have to travel to Portland? Because I just want to wealth of information. Like, I just want to sit and listen and just learn.
I think I might start my own podcast one of these days.
Please
I just don't know if I have the time. I've got a really good friend of mine has been calling me. He lives in New York, and he's like, yeah, when are we going to do the podcast? When are we going to do the podcast? And he's a musician, so he's always touring. And I'm like, yo, man, you're the one who's not even in the country most of the time. You're traveling all over the world. But
they're pre-recorded.
Exactly.
No,
the internet.
They're pre-recorded.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely it's something that's out there.
You could be up at 2 a.m. doing your podcast. You know.
I'd rather be like trying to rest at 2 a.m, but you know.
I'm just saying, like, you can get it done, but I forgot you're 49. Well, you might be a little too old.
Yeah.
It's take your speeches. Just take your speeches that you're already giving and just turn those into podcast recordings, and then, you know, have those conversations that you guys are having probably already on your phone and record those conversations. It doesn't have to be long. I think so when we talk about podcasts, we think, oh my gosh, it has to be like an hour worth of content. Really, it could just be snippets here and there of, you know, profound things that you said and just string them together, because you have some major information that I think needs to get into the hands of these young kids for sure. For sure.
Well, and it also comes back down to what I'm talking about, opportunity. Like, I realize there's an opportunity there that I'm squandering. And so I you know, I still prefer to read a magazine over read something digitally, you know, online. I still, you know, I still have a TV and a VCR and I still have a VCR, you know, and a DVD player. And I don't watch them.
I got rid of the VCR because it was just sitting there.
It's mine is just sitting there, but look, like right here on my desk, I've got a videotape.
Oh my gosh! Do you have a beeper? You got a pager too?
No, right. Probably somewhere in the other room. No, this is. I have in my defense, I do have a deck that I can transfer VHS to DVD. So that's why this tape. This is one of the things I'm getting ready to transfer. So she's not buying it. She's like, no, you just a pack rat. I see all them books back there. I know that this is just the beginning. You're right. It is. It's just the beginning. So
we got to get all that monetized. You got to monetize all that.
VHS tapes. Wow.
It's time to monetize, David.
I mean, we have a couple more questions.
Okay.
You know, this has been a lot of fun. We definitely need to wrap up. But 2 more questions. One, how has the younger generation been responding to comic books? Are they still as popular as they were when? And also, if somebody wanted to get into this industry, how do they get into the industry, and what are some of the things that they need to look out for?
Okay, so the first part is I honestly don't think they're as popular with young people as they should be. I think that there's a lot of competition between video games and YouTube and all these other things vying for the attention of young folks. Comic books can seem sort of dated and old-fashioned. And they're also, I think the price isn't right. You know, you're not getting as much bang for your buck. That's just me. But I also do know that I think part of the problem is that most Americans learn how to read the same way, which is through a juxtaposition of text and images, children's picture books, whether it's Dr. Seuss or the Bernstein Bears, that sort of thing, what have you. And we emphasize the importance of that, and then we just jump away from it really quick. And so by the time kids are in about third grade really, they're expected to stop reading books with lots of pictures in them, as if suddenly it's not acceptable, like it's not really reading. And so I think that that's a big part of the problem. And I just also think that, I'm very critical of the comic book industry as a whole, in that most people, the comic books are probably the hardest thing in the world, or the hardest thing in this country to just go buy. Like, you have to know where to go buy them. And whereas you can buy just about anything anywhere.
True.
Not that I shop at Walmart, but I could walk into a Walmart and buy just about anything except a comic book. Okay, what does that tell you? I can go in and buy a gun at Walmart, okay, and I can buy a gun and tampons. I can buy all kinds of things. I can buy food, but I can't buy a comic book at Walmart. So what does that tell you?
VHS tapes.
I could probably still buy VHS tapes at some Walmarts. And so there's that problem there. As for how do you break into the industry, it's very simple. Is that you just do it. Okay, there's companies like Marvel and DC, which are major corporations that are owned by major corporations. That working for them isn't breaking into the industry. Working for them is winning the lottery, not just scratches. That's winning the mega bucks, right? But you don't just get there overnight. I mean, you there's a lot of things that you have to do to get there. But you can sit down in your home right now with a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper, and you can create your own comic books. You can do them on your computer too. There's all sorts of ways to do them, and there's all sorts of ways to get them out there. Now if you're talking about how do you make money, that's another topic altogether. But you sign up for an account on Tumblr. Right now, today, you could take a pen and a piece of paper and write and draw something on it. If you got a scanner, you can scan it. You can upload it to Tumblr, and boom, you've made a comic, right? You put more than 2 pages together, and now it's technically a comic book, right? As opposed to a page of comics, it's a comic book or booklet or whatever you want to call it. And then you get it out there. You build an audience. And not an audience. I think you need to build a community. I think that this is the problem, going back with the Shea moisturizer thing that we're talking about. It's like there was a community there. Yeah. Whether or not the company fully comprehended that it was a community, we undervalue our community often. And there's an old saying. We saw this. This is one of the things that my grandfather taught me was, because he grew up. If he was still alive, last week would have been my grandfather's 100th birthday. He was born in 1917, and April 19th, 1917, and he. So he grew up in the era of Jim Crow. He grew up in the era of separate but equal, which we knew wasn't equal. And he talked about, he would tell me about the companies and the businesses that he saw that thrived and flourished when black folks could not go anywhere else. And then with desegregation, a lot of that fell apart. And it fell apart because of this pervasive ideology that black folks have, that I think a lot of it was instilled in them by white folks, but they still carried on, which is the white man's ice is colder. If the white man's selling it, it's got to be better. Exactly. And we're still kind of caught up in that mentality. And it's this notion that we have to ask them for permission to even just express ourselves. So yeah, if you want to make comics, you just make them. If you want to make movies, just make them. See, now the difference is people go, I want to make movies. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, they ain't just going to give you a camera and $100 million to make a movie.
Exactly.
But, you know, if you got one of these, you know, you got a smartphone, you can shoot something on a smartphone. You start, you know, it sounds like a cliche to say that you have to learn how to crawl before you can learn how to walk before you learn how to run. But it's there's truth to it. And so the thing is if you want to make movies, go out and make them. Now, I mean, I'd love to. I got movies I'd like to make right now, but ain't nobody giving me $100 million. I can't even get them to give me $1 million. So, you know, and that's the thing. I've made a couple films, and I said that I wasn't going to do any more until I didn't have to put my own money into it. And so, you know, but that's not stopping. It should not stop anybody. Lack of money. I mean, we come from people who never had money and still made things.
Exactly.
Hip hop was born is something from nothing. You know,
exactly.
Jazz is something from nothing. Soul food is something from nothing. We are experts at making something from nothing, and this notion that you know, when people tell me, oh, I'm not going to write a book until someone pays me. It's like, then you ain't never going to write a book. You know, why should you be paid? Prove to me that you're a writer first and foremost. You know, I mean, the trap I always fall into is someone will come to me with a writing gig, and I don't even ask how much money there is. Then I realize, oh, did I just commit to do this for free? And it's like, well, who cares? I want to write it, you know. I can
exactly, yeah,
because I can always get a job, you know, cleaning septic tanks if I need to. You know, it's again, there's that fire in you. What are you going to do? You're going to extinguish it, or are you going to find a way to stoke it? And sometimes you're not going to find a giant tree limb or a big log that you can put on the fire. You're just going to find some twigs. But them twigs are going to keep that fire going, and until you can find something bigger.
Absolutely.
Wow. I really hope that you all are just watching this and taking this all in and taking notes, and go back and watch the replay, because so much valuable information. I mean, really enough for like 3, 4, 5 shows. We could really break this down. David, you have been awesome.
Thank
so
you.
Much wisdom in your 49 years of age.
Yes, Professor David.
How can our viewers contact you? How can they stay in touch with you? And of course, you know, when your next project is released, how can they get that?
You can hit me up I'm on Twitter, David Walker 1201. So that's really simple. I'm not as good with my, you know, web presence as I need to be. I'm on Facebook. I've got a writer page, which I believe is David Walker Writer or something like that. It's I don't even know what it is. And then I have a blog that I never update. And so I'm terrible. And so I'll probably be reaching out to both of you at some point in the next couple of days, like, oh, how do I get this going? Because
we definitely got to get the Professor David's comic book going.
Well, all you
got to do is download the app. It's an app called iArthur. iArthur, if you have a Mac, I don't know what it is for the other one for other computers, but if you have a Mac, you download iArthur, and you can have a comic book up in about an hour. It will be It'll be interactive. You can put in your videos, you can put in audio, and you can have it for sale for $3.99 or something cheap or something like that. Just target it towards your specific audience, and I guarantee you will make sales. So anyway, I just want to make sure.
There's all kinds of ways to do that stuff. So yeah,
it is.
No barrier. The one thing I will say is that when you become an entrepreneur, when you get to a level where it's your time gets consumed by the work. by either creating the work or making sure that you have more work to come. And so for me, I'm guilty of this. Like social media is like, that's like a drug to me. You know, I'll spend too much time on it. I will get lost in it. And then it's like, oh, I got to get work done. And I'm constantly thinking, I just need to hire somebody like to do this for me, you know, but there's never enough money, you know. But yeah, it's yeah. And I just,
like you said, with your community, then you lose touch with your community because somebody else is doing it.
And people that follow me will see that I spend most of my time just posting pictures of flowers. That's what I do. That's my preferred form of therapy.
I love it.
You're hilarious. What's your favorite flower?
My favorite flower is there's two. One is the passion flowers are amazing. We don't get them a lot in this part of the country, so when I see them, I get really excited. And there's another flower called Love in the Mist. And for the most part, I don't know the names of a lot of these flowers. I just take pictures. I go for walks to sort of relax and unwind. And it's that in and of itself is a long story, how I started taking pictures of flowers, and that's what I do. And my close friends will always know, oh, he had a bad day because he posted like 50 pictures of flowers. And they know that's he was close to running around, going out and killing somebody is what it was. But instead he went and got pictures of flowers. So that
is hilarious. You're hearing it all.
What's up, Bill?
So another form of therapy, flower therapy.
That's pretty dope.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you.
Thank
Hopefully,
you.
No flowers today.
I don't think. I took a bunch of pictures yesterday, so I might post some pictures from yesterday. But I got work I got to get done, so you know.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Eat some dinner, get back to work.
Yeah,
we
thank you so much.
Your time, your energy, your wisdom, just all kinds of nuggets that you dropped. Yeah, we appreciate you. Yeah, and you know, if we need to make a trip to Portland to attend your class, let us know.
Please. Please. We'll sit in the back. Be quiet. Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
And thank you all viewers for watching and hanging in there with us. Some of you are still watching and still commenting. We appreciate you. We are here every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern to get your PayPal popping, your business booming, and your life and relationships to explode. Remember, hit us up at boot2boom@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. We want to see you at P $3.99. We will see you there in July. And we will see you next week with another amazing edition of Boot to Boom. See you all next time. Have an amazing evening. Good night, guys. These people still. Boom!